Now the Lifetime Legal Innovator Award. This is the 5th year in a row now that we're recognizing a Lifetime Legal Innovator, somebody whose work has left a long-term impact on our profession. I would say this year's winner has left a truly long-term impact, 150 years long-term actually. Our honoree this year practiced law 150 years ago. Lavinia Goodell. She is the first female Wisconsin lawyer. You talk about a tough battle. Male lawyers wouldn't even accept her as an apprentice, so she studied on her own. She finally got into court. She won her first court trial. She appealed a case to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They wouldn't admit her because she was a woman. Ultimately, she got the state to pass a law that allowed women to be attorneys back in 1877. She also championed women's right to vote, right to own property, retain custody of their children, receive financial support when they divorced abusive or neglectful husbands. All of this with tremendous barriers in front of her, but she just kept going and kept going. Her historic contributions, I think, are pretty visible even today. Half the law students in both of our law schools are women. 5 of our 7 Supreme Court justices are women. It's especially timely, I think, as we recognize next year's 100th anniversary of a women's right to vote. What makes it even more interesting that this whole project has sort of become not just a lifetime award, but it's led many different people to really look into Lavinia's life and her work and correct the record. There were a lot of old records out there that were not accurate about Lavinia Goodell's life and her work and her career. In fact, a photograph of who we thought was Lavinia hung in several courthouses. It turned out it was the photograph of someone else. Those are being replaced. So, you know, not only that, you might have noticed down here we have on display a certificate of admission to the Supreme Court. That's Lavinia's certificate of admission. And it's being donated today to the Wisconsin Historical Society. Andrew and Simone are here to accept that. So that's terrific. At the forefront of all of this, Colleen Ball, an appellate attorney with the Wisconsin Public Defender, and Nancy Kopp, she's with the Supreme Court Commissioner's Office. Colleen and Nancy have really painstakingly researched Lavinia's life and her work. They continue to help correct the historical record about Lavinia. They have created a website that talks about Lavinia and her work. They've got a blog chronicling Lavinia's work and her life. They continue to work on chronicling and really documenting Lavinia's contributions to our profession. Also, Steve Bates, the great-great-grandnephew of Lavinia, has researched Lavinia in Rock County. Steve lives in Columbia, South Carolina. He traveled up here and is here with us today. He is also a lawyer. So he is here representing Lavinia and her family. At this time, please help me welcome to our ceremony today Steve Bates, Colleen Ball, and Nancy Kopp.
Thank you.
Nancy, that's yours.
Beautiful. Okay, do you want to hold up? Thank you. Nancy and I cannot thank the State Bar enough for honoring Lavinia Goodell today. You may know that when she moved for admission to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, one of her arguments was, hey, how can we expect the court system to deliver justice properly when half the population is excluded from the bar and from the courts? And the swift response she got from Chief Justice Edward Ryan was motion denied, thereby demonstrating her point. And so we think that her decision to challenge the Chief Justice's decision to persuade male legislators and a male governor to sign the bill that she drafted to open the bar to everyone in the state, we think that that should be celebrated by all of us. It contributed to diversity in the profession, but also to equal justice. Now, Nancy and I began researching Lavinia about 18 months ago, and I think our initial impressions were that she was a local hero, but we quickly realized that she was engaged with some of the most prominent issues of the day in the national press. Among other things, when she was young, in her early 20s in the 1860s, she helped her father, a big abolitionist, publish one of the leading anti-slavery papers in the day. Believe it or not, she also helped launch America's first fashion magazine, that's Harper's Bazaar, and she wrote afterwards that she thought that experience improved her writing, a skill which she then quickly put to good use advocating for women's suffrage in the national press, and she did that a full 50 years before women gained the right to vote in America. In 1874, she was the first woman admitted to practice in the circuit courts in Wisconsin, and a couple months later, she became the first woman to argue a case to the jury in Wisconsin. And stop and think about that, people. Back then, that means your opponent, the judge, and all of the jurors were men. Guess what? She won, So this is pretty exciting as you're reading along and discovering these things about her. She didn't stop there. In 1875, she ran for Janesville City Attorney, and we think she may be the first woman in the country to run for that office. We have a scholar working on that issue to help confirm it for us right now. So I've described all of these firsts, and I still haven't talked about her advocacy for temperance, and as Tom mentioned, her advocacy for the rights of married women and for prison reform. I guess the point really is Lavinia spent her life innovating, and always, always for the benefit of disenfranchised people. So thank you, State Bar of Wisconsin, for honoring her. And an extra special thanks to Joyce Hastings and Mike Wiltsey for raising her profile. And I don't just mean her professional profile, I mean her physical profile too. Thank you for that. We are working to restore her true identity. And I'd like to mention, follow up on what Tom said. She did leave behind very detailed diaries and hundreds of letters. And what Nancy and I are trying to do is share with the public those eyewitness accounts of her private life, of what it was like to break into the law as a woman in the 1870s, as what it was like to mingle with the famous Harper brothers as an editor at their magazine, what it was like to advocate for suffrage and prison reform in a time when everybody was against it. You can get that if you come to our blog, www.laviniagoodell.com. Please subscribe by email or Facebook or Twitter. We would really appreciate it. And now, here's your real treat. As Tom said, Steve Bates, Lavinia's great-great-grandnephew, is here today to speak with you. And Steve has done a lot of research on his own about Lavinia. He's also helped Nancy and me with our research. And he is, among other things, the former executive director of the South Carolina ACLU. And I think that fact is important because given Lavinia's passion for civil rights, I really think she'd be thrilled to have Steve in particular here today to accept this, this award. So please welcome Steve Bates.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here today. Lavinia Goodell was just a name in my family tree when my wife and I visited Janesville in 1989 while I was in Madison on an ACLU conference. But we went to Janesville looking for information on my great-grandfather who had been born in Janesville, and his parents and his grandparents, who we believed had been buried in Janesville. Turns out that they had been moved to Berea, Kentucky, and it took us a long time to find them. But what we did, we went into the Rock County Historical Society and asked questions about where'd the graves go, where'd they live, what they do here. And the archivist said, "Do you know about Lavinia?" And I said, "What is there to know about Lavinia?" And she said, "Here is a tape recording of a program that we did about women in law in Rock County and on Lavinia Goodell." And there opened my world into Lavinia Goodell. Since then, I think I am the only person in my family that I know of who has pursued this through the years, reading and everything that's been written, following the publications and the research, until Nancy and Colleen came along. I was an observer. I got to watch what other people were saying about her career and why she was important to us. And now I'm finding out firsthand more information than had been available before, thanks to Colleen and thanks to Nancy and Colleen. On behalf of the family, Lavinia's been gone for 140 years. No one living today knew her. There are a few of us, I was thinking on the way, tenuously, who actually knew somebody who knew her. And I am one of the last remaining people who knew his great-grandfather, the one born in Janesville, was 11 years old when Lavinia died. But in all those years of knowing somebody who knew Lavinia, and I've talked to my distant cousins about this, nobody ever asked or never thought to ask them, tell me about, or to say to them, tell me about Lavinia. So I am here today on behalf of the family to say thank you for giving her the recognition that we know she deserves. It's been a long time coming. In fact, I'd say it's about time. And just to clear up any mystery, we don't know the answers to who that other woman is in the photo, but I've narrowed it down to 2 of her cousins. And we hope to have that mystery solved soon. But thank you all very much on behalf of the Frost and Goodell families.
Thank you again to the State Bar for honoring Lavinia Goodell with the Lifetime Legal Innovator Award and for helping to give this extraordinary lawyer the recognition that she deserves. One of the joys of this project has been the chance for Colleen and me to meet some of Lavinia's relatives. In addition to Steve Bates, we've met Sarah Stamps of Nashville and Beverly Wright of Bear, Delaware. Beverly graciously shared family photos with us, and we asked her if she might possibly have any other Lavinia-related materials. She promised she would look, and to our great excitement and hers, she found the 1879 certificate admitting Lavinia to practice before the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and that's the certificate that we have here today. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. As far as we are aware, that certificate has never been publicly seen before today. Endearingly, Beverly's grandfather wrote on the certificate in red marker to identify who it had belonged to, and he wrote, "First woman lawyer in Wisconsin, Gema's grandma's sister." And Beverly has asked us to read a short statement. "I have known of Lavinia Goodell since I was a young girl. We had a very old photo album which included her business card, and we had also inherited all the family papers of my grandfather, Ambassador Wesley Frost. Several years ago, I contacted the Wisconsin Historical Society about an incorrect photo published of Lavinia. When lawyers Nancy Kopp and Colleen Ball started their comprehensive research on Lavinia, they found me. I had done some initial sorting of the family papers, but when they asked me if I had any additional information, I delved deeper and found the certificate enabling Lavinia to present cases before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. After the certificate's display at the Legal Innovator Awards, I am happy to donate this important document to the Wisconsin Historical Society. Beverly S. Wright, Bear, Delaware." And so now I'd like to call on Simone Munson from the Wisconsin Historical Society to say a few words.
I'm going to come pick this up first. I heard that. Somebody said I should be wearing gloves. We actually don't wear gloves with paper. We only wear gloves with photos. It's a common misconception. So I just want to hold this up so that everyone can see if you haven't had a chance to see. It's interesting to me, I always find it interesting that it's a piece of paper that gives us the authority to do things, right? And in the work we've been doing in the last year to help celebrate women's right to vote, there was a big event in June commemorating Wisconsin ratifying the 19th Amendment and being the first state to ratify the 19th Amendment. And as a woman, one of the things that I found most interesting about it was that it took a bunch of men to sign a piece of paper to give us the right to vote, right? It's a really interesting concept. And so on behalf of the family, on behalf of the Wisconsin Historical Society, I really do want to thank the family for being here and Nancy and Colleen for all the research that they did, because it's using pieces of paper like this one that help us sort of shed light on how things change and how innovation happens and what research can be done with the historical record to show the progress that we've made over time. And so we are really, really honored and excited to add this piece of paper to our collection at the Wisconsin Historical Society. And we hope that as scholars and others continue to do research on Lavinia and other female lawyers, that this will help shed light on their stories and help them sort of be remembered in the light that they deserve to be remembered in. We will be commemorating the centennial of the women's right to vote all year long in 2020. And so this piece of paper will go into storage for a time, but we are hoping that we can find ways to incorporate it into exhibition and programming around the state in the coming year as we continue to celebrate women, suffrage, and women's involvements in politics and the legal system. So thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you to the governors, State Bar leadership. Thanks for giving us your time. I know you have a lot of business to conduct today, and so we appreciate having the opportunity to have these folks tell you their stories. I think there's some great lessons in all of them. Thank you. In 2020, if you see innovation, let us know about it. Thanks again.